Thank you, Arlo. So, I'm in really wonderful company here, so I'm sure many of you know Chekhov's maxim that if you have a gun, say a rifle on the wall in the first act and the third act, it has to go off. Well, keeping that in mind, here at the Key West Literary Seminar, they made sure that they had a pineapple on the wall in the first act and that it would have to start to fall off the wall in the third act. I'm very grateful to be here. I'd like to thank the board, Arlo, the staff, my fellow writers, and everyone who's here. I'm going to take you on a tour of the horizon through my 4 books of poetry and actually behave and hit the theme of family. What I'm going to do is begin with kind of a frame. I like frames to set up things. The Arabian Nights has a wonderful frame. Invisible Man has a wonderful frame. And then I'm going to start with kind of the most important family in poetry, which is the family that we make between the poem and the reader, and then take you into the start of family with the idea of your mother, and the incredible thing that we should always remember, which is that when our mother looks at us, that's someone who was there with you and knew you from the very beginning, and somehow the human brain is a very strange thing where it erases all of that. So you get to know your mother once you have a type of, or you remember your mother once you have a type of social brain, but in the kind of natal moment, well, suffice it to say your mother remembers that and you don't. The first and final poem is The Sun. The first and final poem is The Sun, which means that poetry is a ritual that the sun organizes and arranges. But aside from the other is the singular essential thing, and is one thing among billions upon billions of things just like it, is known by a name which is not its true name, and so scours the earth in search of what it may have been in the beginning of things, and may still be in the end, when time, that invention of the mind, finally reveals not the meaning, but the meaningfulness of this mystery we call life. Ooh. Let's make a deal and not applaud until the end. Here's where we make that deal, we seal that deal in wax. This is a poem to all of you. It's called The Reader. This is from my first book, The Ground. I'll go from the ground through heaven, through living weapon, through to my most recent book, Silver, and we'll hit on themes of family. Right now, you're my most important family, and hopefully I'm yours. So here we go. To the reader. If you want to talk to me, you'll send me an email. If you don't know my email, you can Google it. If that's not enough, you can pay a site for all my info and then use Google Maps to find my street. My building's the blue one, but please don't come by. I think we've got a good thing going here. We both thrive on a type of moving silence, like that sound you hear in static and just know is something more than static. So you lean in and start to feel something tighten and crack, like frightened wings on fire that dwindle down to your lap like a cat. Hi, I'm Rowan, and we likely haven't met. But if we have, or have not, I love you. Mara incognitum, right? Latin for unnamed sea, unknown sea. that I can't recall my first glimpse of my mother. Alien-eyed, wrapped in alien cloth, how could I? Once she held me, she just was my mother. That's just how it goes. This is just one of many beautiful moments I've been a part of, but can't and won't ever remember. That's just life, I guess. The void. That's just part of life, some hidden cave sunk deep in the mind and built for beautiful, but can't remember. I saw it once, here dissolving, there reassembling like gleaned, second-long seasons. And for what reason, I just don't know. Years asking myself, why? Why can we not remember this past? Are we here because the mere dust of stars torched in the throat of an equation? It's a cold thought, I know. But belief just burns brighter in the cold. Brighter as the first idea flares and reverses, like the first new motion of that first majestic ocean, just as it discovered impregnable ground. This is a poem that's called Proper Names in the Lyrics of Troubadours. As you know by now, my name is Rowan Ricardo Phillips. I think anybody should write a poem about their name, whatever your name is. If your name is John Smith and think I shouldn't write a poem because my name is John Smith, you definitely need to write a poem about your name, John Smith. Because they're inheritances, right? And they teach you about your angle of entry, whether you want to be genealogical, factual, historical, mythological, if your name is, say, Daphne or something like that. And sometimes we give ourselves new names, and we want to talk about that as creating ourselves. So after being born and realizing that my mother knows me in a way that I never can, here we are to the creation of family and how my name works, this thing that is me, but I didn't have a say in. Proper names in the lyrics of troubadours. My parents never call me Rowan. I'm Ricky, from Ricardo, but not Ricky Ricardo. I'm also the first Phillips in my family. My mother decided Philip, my father's family name, sounded too much like a first name, in America at least. Rowan Phillip would lead inevitably to Philip Rowan. That was her story, and she's sticking to it. For the record, that's an Old Norse first name, a Spanish middle name, and one of those faux English, faux Dutch-sounding last names that's really Greek for lover of horses. Rowan Ricardo Phillips. Another of those names that straddle seas in the sails of unseen ships. Still, it sounds typically West Indian to me, and like the West Indies, indefinite. An indefinite noun in an indefinite poem. It took me a while to accept it. I have a great love of Dante, not just the Divine Comedy, but especially the Divine Comedy. And I think that it's one of these. I think it's one of these poems that really allows you to transpose. You know, we heard that people don't write based on revenge, but Dante, at least in the Inferno, was very much motivated almost entirely by revenge. He was existed in the political world in his world of Tuscany and was exiled and was never allowed to really go back. And so this epic poem in the dialect of his region, which really became conventional Italian, is also a love letter to his language. And I bring that up because there are very few moments, very, very, very few moments where Dante uses another language. but he uses the language of Provençal when the great troubadour poet Arnaud Daniel comes to him and speaks in his native tongue and says, I am Arnaud. I was an artist. I made. I don't know what's going on outside of the world of purgatory, outside of these flames, but when you make it where you're going, tell people that I'm still here, and sing of me. And I've done quite a bit of translating from the Catalan, from the Spanish, and also from the Italian. And I wanted to transpose this moment. It's a very powerful moment. It's an epigraph in Eliot's The Wasteland Where Things Begin. And so I've transposed Dante to my own region and my own concerns and my own thoughts. This poem is Purgatorio 26, lines 135 to 148. And there is that troubadour, Arnaud Daniel, saying in the epigraph, Eu suis Arnaud, que plau e bao cantan. I am Arnaud who cries, and goes on singing. He was gone. Like a leap of flame that after having burst from the sun is dragged back into the sun as though nothing, leaving only the seen surface of the sun. I'd lost my way, I had no guide but a light, the slowly approaching twilight, and I said, light, be this world, and I said, world, be this light, and slowly a bright star field fell to the sea, fell all about the one my guide had pointed out. And he said, Rastaman, I am man, angel seven-sealed. No, but I smell some of the smoke of Babylon on I. Come closer, closer, so I might have some ital veneration. I am Bob, who weep and strum and gather and leave all things little and small. Jah left I lung and guitar to sing to everyone, all them, but I nah know ting about them but what I sing. And I nah want no ting. I nah want no ting. So when I complete I uphill trip to I, sing some of I soul you see here so close, peeled from I man's structure. Sing some of dread in I, so I not find it so easy love Bob dead. Then he fled as the lion that defined him. So that is a poem about extended family, the families that artists create for themselves. Dante was certainly showing that Arnaud Daniel, the great troubadour, was in his family enough to break his love affair with his own language, and that's certainly the case with Bob Marley with me. But you've got to really be careful using Bob Marley in your stuff, you know? You got to be scared, but not too scared. On to Heaven, and a bridge, a bit of a bridge, a translation of Paradiso, Book 5, lines 91 to 93. And as the swift shank sinks into its mark, before the bowstring has time to calm, so did we speed into the second heaven. Here is a translation and transposition from the Odyssey, Book 11, where Odysseus finds many of the people who he fought with in Troy. Achilles comes to him and wants to know, how is my son doing? Odysseus says, worry not, your son is fine. Other people mill around and want to ask him, what's going on in the living world? There's shades at this point. One person does not want to talk to him, and that's the biggest soldier of them all from the Greeks, Ajax. Ajax, second only to Achilles in battle. Once Achilles died, there was supposed to be your typical rite of passage of his arms, his wonderful shield. And shouldn't it go to Ajax, the second greatest fighter? But Ajax was a man of action at a time when the world was turning towards men of words. And who had better words than Odysseus? And so Odysseus convinced everyone why actually he, wily Odysseus with the great words, should actually be given Achilles' armor and shield. Ajax felt the world slipping away from him. He didn't know what to do. He descended into madness, slaughtered a number of animals, thinking that they were his fellow soldiers. And then when the light came to him and he saw what he did, killed himself in shame. This is set in heaven, a place that the Greeks would have no idea of. So they're not in the Elysian fields, they're in heaven, and they're trying to figure all of that out. So it's a translation and kind of a transposition at the same time. The Odyssey, book 11, lines 538 to 556. This is also, of course, you'll hear about son of, as so often happens in Homer with the Homeric epithets, but also Odysseus still trying to talk to everyone like brothers. So another idea of family, what type of history and actions make you family, and how strong those bonds can be and what leads them to break. The soul of swift-souled Achilles, hearing me praise his son, silvered and then was gone. His long strides causing him to blend light bent into the shining maize meadow cloud bank, shadowed by that one solitary tree. It takes 16 years for light, let alone a soul, to cross. The other dead who thrived, though they had died, rejoiced at seeing me and sang one by one to me. And I, in turn, said back to one after the other that the song that soul sang was a blessing and that I had never heard anything like it, which was true. But also, I must admit, they bored me to tears. Tears that their surprisingly still finite knowledge took as tears of pure joy from hearing them sing. Only Ajax Telamoniades kept away. Arms crossed, refusing to speak, dim-starred and disappearing into his rage. All because of a simple spar of words, a mere speech, and winning Achilles' armor. Athena above and those men at the ships decided that, not me, although it's true, he never stood a chance. By custom, he should have been given the matchless medal. How I wish I hadn't won that contest. How the ground closed over his head for it. What a fool I can be. Ajax, who knew no equal in action, but for the one man who surpassed him, just fled Achilles. So capable of happiness despite all that happened because he washed up here. Heaven, this implausible place for us. Strange that Ajax is also in heaven, despite ending his legendary life. In the end, he's won. But he doesn't seem to understand that he's won. Poor Ajax. As always, I thought I had winning words. And so I said to him with unreturned gaze, "Son of great Telamon, mighty Ajax, war tower, shake free from your anger. There's no one to blame but Zeus. And look, he is no longer here. Friend, paradise has found you and given you an eternal roof under the one tree of high heaven. Zeus treated us so terribly, and you, whom he should have loved as his strongest son, you worst of all. But that's history now. Come, my strong brother, Lord and deserved winner of all Achilles' war and was. Come, be with us here. Let me hear the light of heaven in your voice, and let me know, because I love you, how you, of all men, ended up in the keen of this endless burn. But green-eyed Ajax said nothing to me and took a seat under the Rowan tree. This poem is called Never Again Would Birdsong Be the Same. I guess I'm getting a little bit older now. I'm sharing a home and a bed with someone who may or may not be in this room, who knows? Never again, she is in this room. I just realized I need to clarify that. She is actually completely in this room. Never Again Would Birdsong Be the Same is a title from a poem by Robert Frost. He wrote a sonnet about Adam and Eve and how it was all Eve's fault. This poem is not about that, but I stole the title because I steal stuff. I hope the crime writers don't kind of no snitches, right? Snitches get stitches. But this poem is about domestic life, but also about the family that burrows in your head from outside of the domestic sphere, and whether you share that or not. Never again would birdsong be the same. 8 floors below our wide open window as early summer sang to early dawn, and no breeze blew, a car crouched idling under a red traffic light that had spent most of the night with nothing in sight but the rare bus or cab. I only knew the car was there by the boom of its stereo, that sudden sound stirring me from deep sleep. Her face facing mine, my face lost in hers. We slept like the lines of a villanelle, apart, together, woven into one. Then I rose and went to the window, how for some reason the mind can't seem to rest until it's seen what it's heard and defines it. And I looked out and down, but the car by then had already pulled away. No sign of it, but for its dragon tail of bass. I still wonder if this really happened, if it matters in the greater scheme of things. Is a poem the wonder or the matter? A little later, we started our day, coffee, the paper, a shower. She asked as we Sunday relaxed if I'd slept well. She asked me what I was humming. I stopped. Months passed, then years, and I still have that song in my head. Like a bee's swarm burrowing through the skull and finding there my old self, which now feels as though it once knew and loved the city more in that rare heavenly moment that it and I were one. Just as Wu-Tang's here forever cracked the dawn, and swerving swallows raptured in Old Dirty's voice. Yeah, Old Dirty Bastard, AKA Dirt McGirt, AKA A Son Unique, ODB, the specialist, the dead one. This poem is called Even Homer Nods. Even Homer Nods. Where'd you go? Ah, here you go. It's a very short poem. It's just silence. We were stitching things together so well. Even Homer nods. You can be a mother who knows a god, and you can ask him for magic armor, a shield the width of Saturn's widest ring, some helmet in the new or ancient style. Fill your arms with defenses for your child. Take a peacock feather you've been offered and plant it in that helmet's crown, or keep it for yourself to use as a pen. Note, this was the only option you were offered, stylist or witness. Witness with stylist. So you'd circle down the drain with death, mourning in either silence or sound bites, surrounded by silence and sound bites. Life like this having been polished to shine in the normal ways things shine these days. A dull lull, the type of insufficient glare we used to call out on sight as useless glow. But now in the new darkness we feel a need for a consolation of presence. As when my mother passed me the soft shield, the breastplate like rice paper, the helmet bright as pyrite can be, we already knew that this was part of the old cycle, that I would die soon without a weapon and she'd live on. And we do this again and again and again, without ever knowing we were the weapons ourselves, stronger than steel, story, and hydrogen. Here in America, where we wonder still, after everything that's happened, why anyone bothers to read the classics. I'll read 3 more short poems. This one is called The Triumph of Song. We had a song from the exterior that passes by in a car but stays in your head even though you only caught glimpses of it while you were half asleep. This is about a song in the interior, in a interior space that sinks into you. The Triumph of Song. I mean, the only zone I think I might know, and by know I mean this thing hasn't quite killed me yet, is the triumph of song. All my poems mean that, I think, really. This is the edge of my observable universe. I can't see what doesn't sing, or what I haven't coaxed from some notes out of air. Like the first time I must have heard Strawberry Fields Forever. I was 12 and cupped the soft black sponges to my ears while sitting cross-legged on a friend's twin bed, as the janky copy of the cassette copied over my memory of where I was, whom I was with, and even who I was. All I remember is the song, all that confident lack of confidence, which is what writing poems is really like. The dark blood zoning forwards and backwards, all of it in the brain, the heart, like grass in a bowl, and the burning horizon's sharp swagger. All of it, part physics, part faith, part void. This poem is called, should I read that? No. Well, actually, I'll read this one. This reading was titled, I didn't title it, but it's called Rowan Tree, and I know there's somebody here. Larry, are you here? Is James here? Well, then I'm not going to read this poem. This poem is called The Stolen Note. It's about the extended family of the diaspora. The last word of each line comes from another poem by Seamus Heaney called The Given Note, where he talks about Irish inspiration and song coming from the myth of a violin player out on the Blasket Islands, which are those small islands out in the Atlantic Ocean. This poem is set on the northernmost isthmus of Luanda, where slaver ships first came to the African coast. The Stolen Note, it has an epigraph from Seamus Heaney's poem on the most westerly Blasket in a stone-dry hut. He got this air out of the night. The Stolen Note. Ocean exposed like the smallest Blasket, Luanda's isthmus, a northernmost hut, and a sail staring out at it through the night. They knew that was no crescent moon, had heard of others dragged into the white, their tune silver as shark and sword and loud weather, as much a bleak code as a melody. There was no preparing for it. An ear either knew it or not, nothing easy. A continent turned into an island turned into pain. Take this thing, they heard. This is your first violin. So whether they called it sacred music or not, I don't know if I care. Here it was, the ancient modern mid-Atlantic song of a somewhere turned into nowhere. And nowhere to hide, they listened gravely as an iron note inched closer on air. And finally, the first and final poem is the sun. Not the meaning, but the meaningfulness of this mystery we call life. When time, that invention of the mind, finally reveals what it may have been in the beginning of things, and still may be in the end. And so scours the earth in search of what is known by a name, which is not its true name, and is one thing among billions upon billions of things just like it. But aside from the other is the singular essential thing, which means that poetry is a ritual that the sun organizes and arranges. The first and final poem is the sun. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.